It's time for some Belgian metal. Hi, I'm Belgian Jasper and welcome to the channel. We're going through the alphabet of Belgian heavy metal. We're doing it backwards, so we started with Z on a previous video and working our way all the way to A. And we will finish this list by July 21st when it is the Belgian national holiday, and on that day I will be releasing a video of my top 10 Belgian metal songs of all time. In this series of videos I share my favorite bands and we categorize these bands by the first letter of their band name. And in today's video we'll talk about bands with names who start with P, Q, R, S, T. What am I missing? We're gonna cover bands whose names start with a P, a Q, an R, S, T, and we're gonna start with U. Some letters are more popular for band names than others. In some cases, I've got a ton of bands to choose from, and sometimes I only have a few. You'll see the difference. Let's kick it off with an underground band called Urzamoth. I hope I pronounced that correctly. This is a black metal band that has a bit of a groovy influence, a groovy vibe to it. As far as I know, they only released one album. I would highly recommend you check out the song By the Devil Raised. Alright, number 2, we've got a band called Unified. This is a band that really takes me back to my, teenage years in the late 90s, early 2000s as I was growing up. I would be hanging out many weekends with the local Antwerp hardcore bands, and there would be bands coming in all these small venues from all over the country. And there were some really cool bands that came out of that scene. Some made it big, some not at all. This band is a little bit in the middle. They released only one album, but it's a pretty cool album, and I would definitely check out the song Count on Me. Okay, my next pick for the letter U, maybe one of the more fun band names in this list, Ultraphallus. This band plays mostly sludge metal with a mix of basically a lot of things. Is proggy sludge a thing? Well, Ultraphallus made it a thing. They released a couple of good albums, but my favorite song is actually from a split EP they put out. This is the song Young Bones. Let's go back a little bit in history to 2004 for a really cool band. As far as I know, they only released a few demos. The band is Unleash the Fury, and they brought this cool mix of groove metal with some metalcore. Check out my favorite song, Inner Demon. So who's my favorite band that starts with the letter U? Well, it's definitely not the most known band, I would say, but there's a really cool band that combines, that American heavy metal that a Godsmack would play together with some stoner and rock and roll influences. This band is called Up-Tempo Blues Machines, and I would highly recommend to check out their EP from 2009 with the song Cruiser. Alright, let's move forward to the letter T, and let's kick it off with one of really my favorite metal bands. And even though they always were pretty underground, and I think they only released one album, I just love that entire album. The band plays crossover thrash metal, which is this really upbeat and fun mix of hardcore music and thrash metal. This band is called Trenchfoot, and I saw this band live when they opened the very first Alcatraz Metal Fest in 2008, which was an amazing show. I still have a patch of the band on one of my battle vests. If you like crossover thrash, you should totally check out this band. My favorite song is Streetwise. Alright, let's go back all the way to the 80s. Belgium had a really cool thrash metal band in the later 80s called Target. I only recently discovered this band because one of the former band members actually reached out to me as a reaction on my previous video. It was really cool to be introduced to a band that way. It was a little bit disappointed with myself that I didn't know the band, because it's a pretty cool band. They released 2 albums in the late 80s. Their first album, I feel, has a bit of that East Coast trash vibe to it, a little bit from an Anthrax or an Overkill perspective. Not so much the vocals, but more the way that the songs were built. On their second album, they definitely show a lot more progressive influences, and I find it was quite similar to an album like Alice in Hell by Annihilator. It was a hard pick between both albums. I really liked them a lot, and at the end of the day I went for the second album, and particularly the opening track of that album called Becoming of Chaos.
Generation of confusion, generation of frustration.
Alright, let's go from old all the way to new, and when I say new, I mean brand new. My third pick for bands starting with the letter T is the band Traveler. The singer of this band has been a friend of mine for a long time. His name is Win Bombay. I should definitely call him up to see if he wants to do an interview for the channel. Anyway, 20 years ago, we were hanging out in his parents' garden thinking about potential band names for his new project. Eventually, that project became a band called Caldera, which became a pretty known band in the Antwerp hardcore scene. So Traveler brings us this really beautiful mix of post-hardcore, post-metalcore, as they say themselves, post-whatever. So the band only released 1 EP so far, but they actually just won a competition to record some new music, so we will definitely hear more from them. Their EP, however, is really phenomenal. The title track is Other Lives. Definitely check it out. Okay, so we had some crossover trash with Trenchfoot. Let's go back to crossover trash. I mean, who doesn't love to party with some crossover trash? And especially with this band called Toxic Shock. They definitely found some success also outside of the borders of Belgium. But my favorite song actually comes from a split EP they put out with Iron Reagan, which is one of, the ultimate crossover bands at the moment, featuring members of Municipal Waste. The song is Monday is Cancelled. I'm pretty sure that for people who know Belgian metal, my top choice for band with the letter T is no surprise whatsoever. I am pretty proud that Belgium has one of the best atmospheric black metal, maybe even avant-garde bands in the world. The band is called Therisas, and this might sound weird to say about a black metal band, but they've released some beautiful albums. They're still going strong, and they've released a number of albums, but most fans will agree that their 2004 debut album, Scent of a Dream, is their ultimate classic. And if there's one song that is without a doubt their biggest hit, it is the song Endless. Alright, moving on to the letter S. There's a lot of bands whose names start with a letter S, so it was really hard for me to pick just 5. In fact, the first song that I chose for the letter S is the song I just really love. It's from a metal band who released 1 album in 1984, and so this band is called Steel Lover. And for people that know Belgian music a little bit but are not really into heavy metal, might be surprised to know that at one point Donnie Glenn, the singer of Vaya Con Dios, which was a big pop group in the 80s, actually sang for this band for some time. The album, however, was released before she joined, but my absolute favorite song on that album is the song Forever. I don't know why, but that song always just makes me so happy. When I play that song, I have to crank it up to 11, and I just have to sing along. It always gets me in a good mood. Alright, let's shift gears from early 80s heavy metal to late 2000s hardcore. The Setup is a Belgian hardcore band that released a number of good albums. There's a lot of songs by The Setup that I like, but my favorite would be from 2007, Post-Mortem Blues. Alright, let's go back to the 80s for a second. The Belgian metal scene was really supported by a particular record label called Mausoleum Records. This is the record label that had the Belgian Big Three on its roster, so Killer, Ostrogoth, and Crossfire, but a number of international heavy metal bands. But the label also supported some smaller Belgian bands that maybe never really made it, but definitely produced some fun music. An example of that is the band Scavenger with their album Battlefields. It might not be as heavy as a Manowar, but I would definitely call this true metal. The music is just a lot of fun, even if this was a smaller record label. It's properly produced, and there are some fun effects in these songs that you will pick out. From this album, I would recommend the song Vengeance.
Alone I stand, the room is empty. I can see no sign.
Let's again shift gears and come back to more modern times. In the late 2000s, the band became quite popular and had some radio hits as well. This is an atmospheric sludge doom band with a very modern sound, but very, very heavy. This band is called Stake Number 8. Their breakthrough album, When the Candle Dies Out, remains, I think, their classic. And it also contains their most popular song, without a doubt, called The Sea is Dying. Like I said, that was some pretty heavy shit. Alright, so which band starting with an S for me is even better? Well, the top spot for the letter S goes to Belgium's answer to Arch Enemy. This is a band that brings a cool mix of metalcore and melodic death metal, but with a lot of groove metal vibes flowing through there as well. This band is called Spoil Engine.
No one can save us from ourselves. This is our revolution.
So Spoil Engine already was a pretty established band in Belgium and in the European metal scene, but a few years ago they made some changes in the band lineup, and especially when they brought on board female singer Iris Goossens, the band just elevated to this whole new level. The band released their latest album in 2019, and that album includes the song Riot that I picked for this list, and I expect this band is gonna become huge. Alright, let's move on to the letter R. I really like mid-80s epic doom metal, and Belgium had a band, was part of that club, a band called Ritual. They only released one EP and a few demos, but the song Paternoster is definitely worth checking out.
You're a woman, but now you quit. When you was a kid, you quit.
So from Ritual, let's go to Rituals of the Dead Hand. This band plays a really cool mix of blackened death metal and some doom influences as well. This is a much newer band, and so far they've only released one album called Blood Oath. Definitely check out the song Sworn. Okay, so let's go from extreme metal to something that is a lot more mainstream. There was a band, or maybe I should say project, called Road to Consciousness, which is much more of a gothic, hard rock metal band with some ethnic influences into it. This is a band that had A, a lot of musicians, and B, a lot of singers. I think there was more than 10 singers involved in this record. But the record is pretty cool, and if you like that, you know, gothic, symphonic with some folky elements, music, you definitely want to check out this band. So as far as I know, there was only one album released, and from that album of 2011, check out the song The Middle Path. Alright, let's go back in time a little bit more to the mid-90s. In the 90s, one of the scenes that was definitely flourishing in Belgium was the 8000 hardcore scene. A lot of straight edge hardcore bands from West Flanders, and one of those bands was Regression with the song Pyroclasm. Alright, we're at my top pick for the letter R. This is a band that is, let's call them a hardcore band, although they definitely have some death metal influences, but it's definitely not a deathcore band. The band is called Retaliate. To me it sounds similar to hardcore bands like Bloodshot and Code Red. They only released one album called Why We Hate, and from that album, my favorite track is Vengeance. Alright, moving on to the letter Q. It might not be a surprise that I only picked 2 bands. I'm sure there's more Belgian bands with names starting with a Q. I know a few more, but I'm not the biggest fan. But hey, if you know of Belgian bands whose names start with a Q, definitely tell me about it in the comments. Alright, so the only runner-up that I have for the letter Q is the band called Quaetdoener, which translates into doer of evil. It is spelled in that hipstery black metal way where you want to make things as true cult as possible. But hey, these guys play some pretty cool pure black metal. This is a newer band as far as I know. They've only released one full album called Eternal Wolf, and the title track of that album is my pick because it's just a really cool song. Alright, staying in the category of hipster black metal bands who want to spell their name as true cult as possible, we have the band called Quaedt, which loosely translates into evil. I've always had a bit of a soft spot for this, sometimes underproduced, but very transcending, almost mesmerizing black metal. The song that I picked is the Hoorndrager, which translates into the bearer of horns, or maybe the horned one. Something with a horn. Anyway, you get it. It's black metal. There's gonna be horns, right? Alright, we're at the last letter for this video, the letter P, and let's kick it off with a classic Belgian death metal band called Poseydon. Alright, Poseidon obviously being the name of the Greek god of the ocean, but also of this Belgian death metal band. And this band was around in the early 90s already. They never really broke through, but they've made a comeback. There's been some lineup changes, but Alain de Block, who is the original member, is still there, and they've released a really good album that I highly recommend you check out. From one legendary band to another, this band is more recent, but is definitely building a name for itself over the last 10 years, I would say. This band is called Powerstroke, and they play groove metal that is thrashy, or is it thrash metal that is groovy? I don't really know, but it's a pretty cool mix, and they sometimes throw in some metalcore influences as well. These guys use a lot of different influences, but they kind of make this really cool modern metal combo. Like I said, Powerstroke released a couple of really good albums, and they might actually become really big. My favorite album so far is the album Don Deal from 2016. From that album, check out the song Blessing in Disguise. Alright, let's take it back to the late 80s, early 90s when there was a really cool band that started, a band called Patriarch. This band is still around, although I've not really checked out any of their recent work, but it will be hard to top their debut album, which is still considered their ultimate classic. That album was called Prophecy, and from that album, the standout track for me is Dance, Children of the Moon. Alright, my final runner-up for the letter P is a band that I really, really love. This band plays a hauntingly beautiful, intense version of Funeral Doom. The band is called Pantheist. They started in Belgium. I think they moved around quite a bit, but I still include them in this list for Belgian metal. Like I said, the band predominantly plays Funeral Doom, but there's this folky and even progressive twist to it. It just works. The music just sounds big and epic. When I listen to this music, I just close my eyes and I think of brave Vikings traversing the Atlantic Ocean for the first time. Maybe it's no surprise that my favorite album is actually called The Journey Through Lands Unknown. But it is still Funeral Doom. This is not necessarily music to make you happy, but more to get lost in. And the band just does this beautifully, especially in my favorite song of my favorite album, The Loss of Innocence. So if I like Pantheist so much, why didn't I choose them as my favorite band with letter P? Well, actually, I recently discovered a new band for me that really blew me away, and I really liked their debut album, which came out in 2019. This band is called Predatoria, and this is just some good old-fashioned death metal. Now, apparently this band has been around since 2004, so hello, where were you guys? They only released their first album last year. My favorite song on that album is the song Concrete Coffin. Alright, those are my picks for best Belgian bands whose names start with P, Q, R, S, T, and U. And if you think I've missed out any songs, I know that was a really cheesy segue. Let me know in the comments, and I will be back soon with part 3 of this series on the Belgian metal alphabet. Hey, thank you for watching this video on Belgian heavy metal. Click right here to see more content like this and subscribe to the channel.